Hello, ladies, have you ever noticed how some people smile, laugh, and carry themselves as if the world is theirs, while inside their soul is quietly breaking? Today, I want to talk about those silent battles, the hidden storms, and the strength that nobody sees, but that defines who we truly are. Day by day, he breaks down piece by piece. The world doesn't see it because he hides it. The smile is there, the laughter is there, but inside his soul is quietly collapsing. He hides because silence feels safer than being misunderstood. Silence? People think it's empty, but silence is not empty. Silence is heavy. It carries memories, fears, regrets, and loneliness. It is a scream without sound, a cry no one hears. Every day he hides. He hides because society taught him that showing weakness is failure. He hides because he fears judgment more than he fears his own pain. He hides because silence became his armor, but that armor slowly became his prison. What people don't see is that a breakdown does not happen in a single moment. It grows slowly in the quiet. Every unspoken thought, every swallowed word, every night spent staring at the ceiling instead of sleeping. It all builds up until the mind begins to crack. And yet he stays silent, because silence feels easier than explaining, because silence feels safer than rejection. But silence is the heaviest burden a human can carry. Day by day, silence eats him alive. The outside world sees strength, but inside it is weakness disguised. The heart begs to be heard, but the lips refuse to open. This is not living. It is surviving, but silence is not the end. Silence can be broken. Healing begins the moment truth is spoken, the moment someone listens, not to reply, not to judge, but simply to understand. Behind every silent person is a story untold, and sometimes listening saves more lives than speaking ever could. So remember this: when you go silent, the world may not notice, but the silence grows louder inside you. To speak is not weakness. To speak is courage. To stay silent may hide your pain from the world, but it also hides you from healing. Break the silence because the cost of hiding is too heavy for any heart to bear. Silence is never just silence. It is not an empty pause, not a blank space, not the absence of sound. It is a language, unspoken yet thunderous, carrying meanings that words often fail to deliver. Silence is the way the eyes look away when the heart is too heavy to meet another gaze. Silence is the way the lips tremble, not because there is nothing to say, but because there is too much, and the weight of it cannot find its way into sentences. Silence is the language of hidden pain, a language only the soul understands, a language that speaks louder in the stillness of midnight than in the noise of the day. It is a language that hides inside a smile, disguises itself in laughter, cloaks itself in calmness, but beneath that cloak lies a storm no one dares to measure. Silence is not neutral. It has a pulse, it has a voice, it has a rhythm that echoes through the body. Silence is the shaking of hands under the table, the restless tapping of feet when the heart carries an unspoken burden. Silence is the sigh that escapes before sleep, the heaviness that sits on the chest when no one is watching, the whisper of thoughts that say, "I cannot take this anymore," yet remain trapped in the prison of the mind. And this silence, this quiet mask, is dangerous because the world thinks silence means peace. They think if someone is quiet, they are strong, they are calm, they are stable. But silence can be a scream disguised. Silence can be an emergency hidden beneath normalcy. Silence can be the final language of someone who has been unheard for far too long. Silence is never just silence. It is a diary written without ink, a story narrated without words, a wound bleeding without scars, a cry for help muted by fear, and the longer it lingers, the louder it grows, until the silence itself becomes unbearable, until it presses against the soul like a weight no body can carry, until it begins to crush the spirit, until it becomes the echo of everything lost and everything unsaid, stretching on and on, never ending, because silence, once born, feeds itself endlessly, like a shadow that follows even in the brightest of lights, like a song without conclusion, like a sentence without a final word, like a voice that will never finish speaking, because silence is never just silence. Day by day, a silent struggle eats away at the mind. It does not arrive suddenly like a storm. It does not crash down with the violence of thunder, but instead it seeps in quietly like water dripping on stone, wearing it down not in a single moment, but in countless unseen moments that accumulate over time. Every morning, the face looks the same, but the weight behind the eyes grows heavier. Every night, the world sleeps, but inside the mind, a battle rages with no audience, no applause, no recognition, just silent endurance. This struggle does not shout, it whispers. It whispers in the hesitation before answering a simple question. It whispers in the tiredness that no amount of sleep can cure. It whispers in the smile that feels practiced, the laughter that feels rehearsed, the casual "I'm fine." That hides an ocean of unrest beneath. And day by day, those whispers multiply until the whispers become voices, and the voices become noise, and the noise becomes unbearable silence that no one else can hear but the one who carries it. The mind becomes a battlefield where every thought is a soldier fighting against its own side. Hope fights despair, strength fights exhaustion, dreams fight fears, and yet the war never ends. It is not a war with victory or defeat, only survival. And day by day, the silent struggle continues, unseen by the world, unacknowledged by friends, unnoticed by strangers, because the greatest struggles are often fought behind the curtain of silence. Day by day, the struggle eats away, not in big bites, but in small fragments. The loss of joy in things once loved, the dimming of light in the eyes, the shrinking of conversations, the withdrawal from moments, the quiet retreat into solitude. Each day steals a little piece of the soul, a little drop of strength, a little fragment of self until the person becomes a shadow of who they once were. But the world claps for strength, not weakness. The world honors endurance, not collapse. So the struggle is hidden, disguised, pushed behind layers of smiles, routines, and responsibilities. And yet the eating away continues, minute by minute, hour by hour, day by day, until the mind feels like a fragile glass ready to crack at the slightest touch, yet forced to pretend it is unbreakable steel. And so the silent struggle never announces itself. It does not say, "I am here." It does not wave its hands for attention. It simply eats, consumes, devours quietly, draining energy, draining spirit, draining will, and the world remains blind to it, believing silence means peace, believing quietness means strength, when in truth, silence is the battlefield and the mind is the victim, eroded slowly, endlessly, day by day, by day, by day, by day. The world sees a smile, but behind it the heart carries cracks, a smile, so simple, so effortless, so light on the surface. Yet it becomes the heaviest mask a person can wear. The curve of the lips tells a story the eyes refuse to confirm. For while the face shines with ease, the soul trembles in silence. The world applauds the smile, admires it, even envies it, because the world believes that to smile is to be happy, to smile is to be free, to smile is to be untouched by storms. But smiles can lie, and often they do. Behind that smile lies a heart that has been chipped away, piece by piece, like glass struck repeatedly but never shattered, holding its form yet filled with invisible cracks. These cracks cannot be seen in photographs, they do not appear in conversations, they do not bleed openly, they remain hidden beneath the performance of normalcy. And so, the world believes the smile, never noticing the weight it hides, never suspecting the trembling foundation beneath. The cracks are not created in a single day. They come from years of carrying unspoken pain, from nights of unanswered prayers, from days of pretending everything is fine, from countless disappointments swallowed quietly, from love given but not returned, from trust broken without warning. Each betrayal, each loss, each unhealed wound becomes a fracture, a line across the heart that no one else sees. And yet the smile stretches across the face, hiding it all, because the world does not want to see the cracks. The world only wants the beauty of the smile. But cracks, though hidden, have voices. They echo in the quiet moments when the smile fades and the person is alone. They echo in the heaviness of the chest, in the racing of thoughts, in the hollowness that comes when laughter ends. The cracks whisper, "You are breaking," even as the smile says, "I am fine." And so the war continues, the mask against the truth, the performance against the reality, the smile against the cracks. And the tragedy is this: people fall in love with the smile, not knowing it is armor. They trust the smile, not realizing it is protection. They are comforted by the smile, not seeing the storm behind it. And the more the world claps for the smile, the deeper the cracks become, because the heart learns it cannot show its weakness. It cannot reveal its fractures. It cannot scream out its truth. So the smile stays and the cracks spread. The world sees light, but the heart feels darkness. The world sees strength, but the heart feels fragile. The world sees joy, but the heart feels exhaustion. And day by day, the cracks grow longer, wider, deeper, until one day they may no longer stay hidden, until one day the mask may slip, until one day the smile may collapse into tears. But until then, the show goes on, the world sees a smile, and behind it, the heart carries cracks. Cracks that stretch endlessly, silently, painfully, without ending. Silence can feel heavier than words, suffocating the soul. Words, even when sharp, even when painful, at least release the weight trapped inside. But silence holds everything in, pressing it down into the chest like a stone that never lifts. Silence becomes an invisible weight, one that no one else can see but the one who carries it every second, every hour, every day. When words are spoken, they cut, but they also bleed, and bleeding allows healing. Silence, however, never bleeds. It festers. It lingers in the mind, circles through thoughts, poisons the heart slowly, endlessly, until the soul feels as though it is gasping for air in a room without windows, in a world without doors. And the strangest thing is that silence appears harmless to the outside eye. To others it looks calm, it looks peaceful, it looks like stillness, but inside that stillness is a storm, that quietness is a scream, that peace is suffocation disguised. Every unspoken word adds to the heaviness. Every swallowed truth becomes another brick on the chest. Every night of lying awake with unexpressed feelings becomes another chain around the spirit. And the silence builds, not in an explosion, not in a sudden collapse, but in small, endless increments, layering and layering until the soul is buried alive beneath its own unspoken truths. And what makes silence heavier than words is that it leaves no evidence. A shouted cry can be heard, a written confession can be read, even a tear can be seen, but silence leaves nothing. It hides itself in plain sight. People will say, "You are strong," while inside you are drowning. People will say, "You are calm," while inside you are breaking. People will say, "You are fine," while inside you are suffocating. That is the cruelty of silence. It convinces the world of peace while it strangles the one who holds it. And the longer the silence remains, the more suffocating it becomes. It is like holding your breath underwater, not for seconds, not for minutes, but for years, pretending you can survive without air, pretending you don't need release. But the lungs ache, the heart races, the body begs to breathe. Silence is that unending breath, holding that invisible drowning, that endless suffocation. And yet, silence continues because breaking it feels harder than enduring it. Because the fear of judgment feels sharper than the pain of suffocation. Because the world often punishes words but overlooks silence. And so, silence is carried day by day, night by night, like an unseen chain, like a shadow that refuses to leave, like a cage with no key, growing heavier, heavier, heavier still, until one day the soul cannot carry it, until one day the silence suffocates completely, until one day the weight of what was never said becomes too much to survive, because silence is never light, silence is never easy, silence is never empty. Silence is heavy, heavier than words, heavier than grief, heavier than truth itself, and it sinks endlessly, 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 dragging the soul downward into depths where no sound exists, only suffocation without ending. Every unspoken thought becomes a stone in the chest. At first, it feels small, almost weightless, just a pebble tucked away in silence, something you tell yourself you can ignore. But silence does not let go. That pebble lingers, pressing lightly against the heart. And when the next thought is swallowed, another stone is added, and then another, and then another, until the chest, once free, once light, becomes a cave filled with rocks, and the heart beats slower beneath the crushing weight of everything that was never said. Unspoken thoughts are not harmless. They are alive. They echo. They repeat themselves over and over, turning into questions that never rest, fears that never fade, regrets that never heal. Why didn't I say it? Why didn't I tell them? Why am I holding this inside? And each unanswered question transforms into another stone, another invisible weight that presses deeper and deeper into the soul. And these stones are not smooth. They are jagged. They cut into the spirit with their sharp edges. They scrape the inside of the chest, leaving invisible scars. They pile up unevenly, pressing against the lungs, making it harder to breathe, pressing against the ribs, making it harder to move, pressing against the heart, making it harder to feel alive. And yet they remain because unspoken thoughts have no exit, no escape, no release. They only settle and harden and grow heavier with time. The tragedy is that no one else can see these stones. To the world, the chest looks the same, the smile looks the same, the laughter sounds the same. But inside, the weight is unbearable. Walking feels harder, smiling feels forced, breathing feels like dragging air through a mountain. And still, more stones arrive because silence keeps producing them. Silence keeps turning thoughts into burdens. Silence keeps filling the chest with what the lips refuse to let out. And it never stops. Every disappointment not voiced, every tear not explained, every pain not confessed. Stone after stone after stone. The chest becomes a graveyard of unspoken truths. A tomb where words go to die, and the person carrying it becomes both the prisoner and the coffin. They walk through the world with shoulders that seem straight, but inside the chest bends, the spirit bends, the soul bends under the unbearable weight. And the worst part is that the stones never leave on their own. They do not dissolve with time, they do not disappear with distraction. They remain, pressed against the heart, suffocating it, until one day it cracks beneath the heaviness. For silence is a builder of prisons, and each unspoken thought is a brick, a stone, a chain, a burden, and they pile endlessly, 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 until the chest is no longer a place for living, but a vault where words are buried alive, and the soul breathes under stones that never stop. Adding, never stop pressing, never stop suffocating, never ending. He hides his breakdown because society teaches him to be strong. From the earliest days, he was told that tears are weakness, that emotions are flaws, that silence is strength. He was told that to be a man, to be respectable, to be admired, he must carry his wounds quietly. He must bury his pain deep. He must never allow the world to see him shatter. And so he learns the art of hiding, not because his heart does not bleed, not because his mind does not fracture, but because the world has carved into him the belief that showing it would make him less. He hides because the world celebrates endurance, not collapse. People clap when he keeps smiling through storms. They call him strong when he swallows his tears. They praise him when he stays silent. They honor him when he carries the unbearable. But no one asks how much it costs. No one asks what it does to the soul to hide the breakdown day after day. No one asks how heavy the mask becomes after years of wearing it. And so he hides his breakdown in laughter that feels rehearsed, in jokes that distract, in routines that keep him moving like a machine while the human inside slowly rusts. He hides it behind phrases like "I'm fine," "Don't worry about me," "It's nothing." Phrases that sound strong but are soaked with quiet desperation. He hides it because the world does not listen to cries. It listens to achievements. No matter the cost. And the cost is everything. His peace, his health, his joy, his very self. But the truth is, strength is not silence, and silence is not strength. Yet he hides because he was never taught that. He was taught that crying makes him small, that asking for help makes him less, that collapsing makes him unworthy. And so, he wears strength like armor, but that armor is heavy, and beneath it, the body weakens, the heart trembles, the mind shatters, the soul suffocates, and the hiding never ends. Day after day, year after year, the act continues because the world has no patience for brokenness, because society has no room for fragility, because the myth of strength demands sacrifice. He hides until hiding becomes second nature, until breakdowns happen silently, privately, invisibly, until no one notices, until no one sees, until no one even imagines that behind the smile, behind the strength, behind the silence, there is a man breaking, endlessly hiding, endlessly pretending because society taught him he must never show the truth, never ending. The unseen wounds are deeper than the visible ones. The world understands a cut on the skin, a bruise on the arm, a scar across the body, because they can be seen, touched, measured. But the wounds that do not bleed, the wounds that hide beneath the surface, the wounds of the soul and the mind, those are the wounds that pierce the deepest, because they have no bandage, no medicine, no recognition. They remain invisible to the eyes of others, but they burn endlessly in the heart of the one who carries them. A visible wound asks for help. People rush when they see blood. They comfort when they see tears. They worry when they see someone fall. But the unseen wounds, they remain ignored. A person can be standing tall, smiling, laughing, functioning, while inside they are breaking into pieces, shattering silently, collapsing inwardly where no one can see. And the tragedy is, because no one sees it, no one believes it, and because no one believes it, the wound grows deeper, darker, heavier. These unseen wounds come from words that were never spoken, from betrayals that left no physical mark, from loneliness that cannot be photographed, from memories that replay in the mind like ghosts refusing to leave. They come from nights when sleep will not come, from mornings when rising feels impossible, from days when the soul feels numb. These wounds dig in quietly, like roots beneath the soil, stretching deeper and deeper until the tree looks alive, but inside it is hollow, until the body looks strong, but the spirit is fragile. And the cruelest part is that unseen wounds are carried in silence. The bearer often cannot explain them, cannot describe them, cannot put them into words. How do you describe emptiness? How do you explain a weight that has no shape? How do you cry for help when there are no scars to point to, no injuries to prove, no evidence to show? And so the wounded keep walking, keep smiling, keep pretending, while inside they are bleeding in ways no one will ever notice. The unseen wounds cut deeper because they never heal on their own. A broken bone may mend. A scar may fade, a bruise may lighten, but an unseen wound festers because it is never treated, never acknowledged, never understood. It lingers like a shadow, like a whisper, like a constant ache beneath the skin. And with every passing day it grows, not outwardly but inwardly, until it feels like the soul itself is cracked, like the mind itself is wounded, like the heart itself is stitched together with threads too thin to last. And still, the world asks, why are you sad? You have everything. Why are you quiet? You look fine. Why are you struggling? There's nothing wrong with you. The world does not see that the greatest battles are fought within, that the deepest scars are carved where no eye can see, that the heaviest wounds are carried in silence. And so, the unseen wounds deepen endlessly, without rest, without healing, without recognition, until they become part of the person's very being, until they are no longer wounds but the foundation of who they are, until the soul itself feels built of cracks and pain, stretching on, never ending. Silence becomes a shield, but it also becomes a prison. At first, it feels like protection. An escape, a safe place to hide from questions, from judgment, from misunderstanding. Silence shields you from arguments you cannot win, from explanations you cannot bear to give, from the risk of being rejected when you reveal too much. It becomes armor, invisible but powerful, keeping the world from reaching into your fragile spaces. When you are silent, no one can twist your words, no one can mock your pain, no one can throw your truth back in your face. Silence feels like safety, but that same silence, over time, turns into walls. What was once a shield becomes a cage. What was once protection becomes isolation. The silence that kept the world out also keeps you in. It locks you inside your own thoughts, your own pain, your own unspoken truth. And the longer you stay behind it, the harder it becomes to break free, because the silence grows stronger, thicker, heavier, until it feels impossible to climb out. It is a strange prison, one with no visible bars, no locks, no chains. Yet it binds tighter than iron, it holds firmer than steel, it suffocates more than any dungeon. No one else sees it, but you live within it, pacing in circles inside your own mind, unable to shout, unable to reach out, unable to escape. The silence convinces you that you are safe while slowly starving you of connection, of warmth, of healing. The shield turns to prison the moment silence becomes your only language. You stop explaining yourself, so no one understands you. You stop reaching out, so no one reaches back. You stop showing weakness, so everyone assumes you are strong. And so, you sit alone, protected but lonely, safe but suffocated, alive but disconnected. The silence that once defended you now betrays you, now traps you, now consumes you, and the cruelest truth is this: the longer you stay inside that prison, the more comfortable it feels. You tell yourself it is easier not to speak, easier not to share, easier not to risk, but comfort becomes confinement. The walls grow taller, the air grows thinner, the silence grows louder. Until your voice, once strong, becomes faint, until your truth, once heavy, feels buried, until your soul forgets what it means to be free. Silence as a shield, yes, it protects, but silence as a prison it destroys. It hides you from hurt, but it also hides you from love. It shields you from judgment, but it also shields you from connection. It locks you away, not just from the world, but from yourself. And the longer it continues, the more the shield and prison become the same, until you no longer know if you are safe or trapped, if you are hiding or dying, if you are living or only surviving, caught endlessly inside walls of silence that stretch without escape, without doors, without windows, without ending. Each quiet moment screams louder than any cry for help. The world believes silence is peace, but silence is not peace. It is a storm without thunder, an earthquake without sound, a fire burning with no visible smoke. The quiet is not emptiness. The quiet is a scream that has lost its voice, a plea for rescue that cannot reach ears, a cry so deep it echoes only inside the soul of the one who carries it. A cry for help, when spoken, can be heard. It carries across air, across walls, across people's hearts, but the silent cry, the one trapped inside, the one buried under "I'm fine," the one hidden beneath forced smiles, shouts far louder, even if no one else can hear it. It shouts inside the chest, pounding against ribs like fists on a locked door. It shouts inside the mind, bouncing back and forth like echoes in a cave that has no exit. It shouts inside the soul, whispering over and over, "See me, save me, hear me, hold me." But the words never leave the lips, and so the scream stays locked, swelling louder, louder, louder still. Each quiet moment becomes unbearable because the silence amplifies everything. The regrets, the fears, the memories, the doubts. They all grow louder when there is no noise to drown them out. The quiet becomes a stage, and the mind begins its endless performance, replaying the past, predicting the worst, magnifying every failure, every loss, every unanswered question. The scream grows, but only on the inside, unseen, unnoticed, unacknowledged. And the cruelest part is that no one else realizes. To others, the quiet looks like calm. They see someone sitting still and they assume peace. They see someone not speaking and they assume strength. They see someone smiling faintly and they assume contentment. But inside, that stillness is chaos, that silence is agony, that calmness is a scream so loud it shakes the very spirit of the one enduring it. It is a scream that does not fade with time, it builds. Every unspoken word adds to its echo. Every buried feeling adds to its volume. Every lonely night adds to its force, until the scream is deafening within, yet silent without. Until the quiet becomes more terrifying than noise, until the person carrying it feels like they are living in two worlds, one where they look composed and another where they are breaking apart under screams no one else can hear. And so each quiet moment stretches endlessly, screaming louder and louder, until the soul itself feels cracked from the inside, until the heart feels bruised without touch, until the mind feels exhausted without rest. It is a scream without sound, a cry without voice, a plea without language, and it goes on, louder than words, heavier than noise, deeper than pain, endlessly screaming in silence that never ends, never fades, never breaks, never ending. Mental breakdowns are not sudden, they are built in silence. Day by day, the world often imagines collapse as something instant, as if one moment everything is fine and the next moment it is not. But the truth is far heavier, far slower, far more invisible. A breakdown is not a single event. It is a construction, a silent architecture of pain, built piece by piece, brick by brick, until one day the structure is too heavy, too fragile, too cracked to stand, and it finally falls. It begins quietly, a single night of restless sleep, a single day of pretending to be fine, a single disappointment swallowed instead of spoken, a single tear hidden instead of released. Each one feels small, survivable, ignorable. But each one adds weight. Each one adds another stone to the chest, another crack in the foundation, another burden on the soul. And the silence collects them all, hides them all, stores them all, until the hidden begins to outweigh the visible, until the inner world is heavier than the outer one. Day by day, silence becomes cement. It hardens around the heart. It locks the voice away. It seals the cracks instead of healing them, trapping the pain inside where it multiplies, where it festers, where it grows without limit. And each day that nothing is said, each day that nothing is shared, each day that the pain is hidden, the structure of the breakdown becomes taller, darker, heavier, and still to the outside world everything looks fine. He laughs, he works, he speaks, he carries on, but inside the silent construction continues. Like termites eating wood from within, the damage is invisible until it is too late. Like water eroding stone, the destruction is unseen but unstoppable. Like fire beneath the ground, it burns without flame, spreading until it finally erupts. A breakdown does not happen in a moment. It is years of silence pretending to be strength, months of hiding pain beneath smiles, days of swallowing words that should have been spoken, hours of staring into nothing, minutes of wanting to speak but choosing not to, seconds of breaking a little more. Each time, and then, one day, the weight becomes too much. One day, the mask slips. One day, the silence explodes. And to the world, it looks sudden. But to the soul that lived it, it was never sudden. It was building all along in silence, in shadows, in the quiet spaces no one else saw. And even then, even at the breaking point, silence lingers. The breakdown is not loud. Not always tears, not always screams. Sometimes it is just stillness, numbness, emptiness. A quiet surrender where the body continues moving but the spirit stops. Sometimes the breakdown looks like nothing at all, because the silence has consumed even the collapse, because the silence has become everything, because the silence itself is the breakdown. And it goes unconstructed slowly, endlessly, without warning, without pause. A breakdown built not in days of chaos, but in years of silence, in unspoken pain, in hidden wounds, in quiet nights that stretch endlessly, in mornings that feel heavier than the last, in a silence that keeps building, keeps pressing, keeps suffocating, until the soul itself is a broken house, built and destroyed by the very silence that never stops, never fades, never ends. Hiding pain only feeds the darkness inside. At first, it feels easier to hide it. Safer, quieter, less complicated. To tuck the pain away behind a smile, behind a mask, behind the phrase, "I'm fine." Hiding feels like control, like you are keeping the storm contained, like you are preventing the world from seeing how broken you really are. But the truth is, pain does not disappear when hidden, it grows. It deepens, it multiplies, it feeds on the silence like fire feeds on oxygen. The more you hide it, the more it festers. A wound ignored never heals, it only infects, and the pain once hidden begins to transform. It becomes bitterness, it becomes anger, it becomes loneliness, it becomes despair, it becomes shadows that stretch into every corner of the soul. You tell yourself that by hiding it, you are protecting yourself. But in reality, you are feeding it, strengthening it, giving it power over you. Every unspoken word becomes fuel for the darkness. Every swallowed tear becomes another drop of poison. Every smile worn to disguise the ache becomes another layer of armor that traps the hurt inside, where it twists, where it burns, where it refuses to die. Hiding pain turns it inward, and what cannot be expressed begins to eat away at the heart, at the mind, at the spirit, like rust corroding metal, like roots cracking stone, like fire smoldering beneath ashes. And the darkness loves to be hidden, because when it is hidden, it is invisible. When it is invisible, no one notices, and when no one notices, it grows unchecked, unchallenged, unstoppable. The world sees you smiling, laughing, working, living, but inside, the darkness grows larger than the light, heavier than the joy, louder than the hope. It whispers to you in the quiet, telling you lies, telling you that no one cares, that no one will understand, that no one will ever see the truth. And the more you hide, the more you believe it, the more you give it power, the more it feeds. The tragedy of hiding pain is that it does not protect, it destroys. It pushes people away, even those who want to help. It isolates you behind walls that no one can climb. It convinces you that strength is silence, when in truth, silence is surrender. And yet, still, the hiding continues because the world has taught you that to reveal pain is to be weak, to show wounds is to be judged, to speak truth is to risk rejection. So you hide, and in hiding, you keep feeding the very darkness that breaks you. And the cycle goes on. Hide the pain, the darkness grows. The darkness grows, the pain deepens. The pain deepens, you hide more. And round it goes, an endless spiral where the light dims and the shadows thicken, where the soul becomes heavier and heavier until it forgets what freedom feels like. Because hiding pain never heals it. Hiding pain never lessens it. Hiding pain only feeds the darkness inside, feeds it endlessly, 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 until the darkness becomes everything, until it consumes every corner of you, until you cannot remember who you were before it began, until hiding is no longer a choice but a prison, until silence is no longer protection but suffocation, until the darkness, fed day by day, grows so large it feels infinite, never fading, never loosening, never ending. Healing begins when silence is broken with truth. The silence that has held your pain, your fears, your doubts, your grief, may have felt safe, may have felt protective, may have felt like survival, but it is not healing. Healing cannot grow in hidden shadows, cannot breathe in buried secrets, cannot flourish in the absence of acknowledgement. It waits for truth, for the brave act of naming what has been buried, for the courage to step out of the darkness and speak what has weighed the soul down for so long. To break the silence is not simple. It is terrifying. It is exposing. It is standing naked before the world and saying, "This is what I carry. This is who I am." And yet in that revelation, the first stirrings of freedom begin. To speak the truth is to place a stone on the scale of your burden and watch it tip toward light. To speak is to give shape to the shadows, to allow others to see, to allow yourself to see, to breathe in the acknowledgement that had been missing. Every word spoken against the silence becomes a step toward release. Every confession, every tear allowed to fall, every whispered admission, every shouted acknowledgement, every honest recounting of the pain, it all begins to break the chains. The darkness that fed on silence begins to shrink. The weight that crushed the chest begins to lift. The mind that circled endlessly begins to find space, and the soul, long suffocating, begins to feel air again. And yet, even in speaking, healing is not instant. The echoes of years of hidden sorrow remain. The stones of unspoken thoughts are heavy still. The cracks in the heart are deep. But truth acts like light through cracks in the walls, small at first, fragile at first, but insistent, persistent, unstoppable. With every word, every admission, every act of honesty, the silence retreats. With every truth spoken, the soul stretches, breathes, remembers how to exist without the weight pressing it down. Healing begins when silence is broken, but it is a process without end. Because even as one truth is spoken, another may linger, another pain may surface, another wound may call for acknowledgement. The journey is continuous, like a river carving its path through stone. Each admission, each confession, each moment of courage reshapes the soul. Each step toward speaking, each refusal to hide, each act of honesty is a brick in the bridge from suffering to relief, from shadow to light, from imprisonment to freedom. And the beauty of it is that breaking silence does not only heal the individual, it calls others to witness, to understand, to reflect, to empathize. One truth opens a space for connection, one voice invites another to speak, one courage sparks another, and slowly, endlessly, healing spreads, not in a single moment, not in a sudden flood, but in quiet, persistent, unending waves. So healing begins when silence is broken, but it never truly ends. For as long as there are hearts that have hidden pain, as long as there are minds that have buried truths, as long as there are souls suffocating in quiet, the act of speaking, the act of truth, the act of release must continue, growing, stretching, reaching, breathing life into places long starved. Never know unless given the chance to see. The untold story is heavy. It is full of unspoken words, of feelings that were never expressed, of fears that were buried too deep, of joys that were too fragile to hold onto, of pain too sharp to voice. It is a story that twists and turns, that hides in shadows, that dwells in corners of the mind and heart that are invisible to everyone else. It is a story written in invisible ink, readable only by the soul that carries it, understandable only by those willing to look beyond appearances. Every silent person carries chapters that begin in childhood, chapters that are shaped by loss, by betrayal, by love and its absence, by dreams deferred, by words swallowed, by nights spent alone with thoughts that gnaw and questions that never rest. Every silent person carries moments that shaped them, events that broke them, experiences that hardened them, and memories that linger like ghosts refusing to leave. And all of this, hidden beneath silence, becomes both armor and prison, protection and burden, safety and isolation. To understand a silent person, to truly see them, is to recognize that there is a whole world behind the stillness. It is to acknowledge that what they do not say often matters more than what they do. It is to respect that silence can contain multitudes. Pain, hope, fear, strength, fragility, endurance, longing. And to ignore the silence is to ignore the story, to overlook the depth, to underestimate the weight that has been carried quietly, patiently, endlessly. The untold story grows in complexity with time. Every year adds layers, every experience adds color, every loss adds shadow, every joy adds light, every betrayal adds cracks. The silence keeps it hidden, but the story continues to exist, persistent, alive, shaping the person's thoughts, their actions, their reactions, their decisions, their presence in the world. And even when they speak, even when they reveal fragments, the story remains vast, inexhaustible, unshared fully, because no one could ever capture its entirety. And the most profound truth is this: behind every silent person, the story untold is both sorrowful and beautiful. It is the story of survival, of courage, of endurance, of love, of despair, of hope. It is the story of a soul learning to navigate life while carrying invisible weight, while wearing a mask, while speaking selectively, while loving cautiously, while hiding deeply. It is a story that continues day by day, moment by moment, layer upon layer, unfolding within them endlessly, 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 like a river flowing beneath ice, like a song sung only to oneself, like a universe hidden behind calm eyes, never stopping, never ceasing, never ending. Listening is more powerful than questioning. Words may come and go, questions may be asked and answered, but listening, truly listening, holds a weight that cannot be measured. Listening does not interrupt, does not judge, does not demand explanation or justification. It is the quiet presence that allows another soul to exist fully, without performance, without pretense, without fear. It is the act of witnessing without interference, of acknowledging without altering, of holding space for someone else's inner world, no matter how heavy, no matter how broken, no matter how silent. When we ask questions, we often do so from curiosity, from expectation, from judgment, from desire to categorize and understand on our terms. Questions carry assumptions. They carry impatience. They carry the subtle weight of needing answers in order to feel satisfied. But listening, real listening, carries no such burden. It receives, it honors, it absorbs. It allows the unspoken to linger, the unsaid to find its way, the hidden to breathe. Listening does not push, it does not pull, it does not demand. It simply exists as the safe place where truth, however fragmented, can be laid down. For the person carrying silence, the one whose thoughts are heavy and whose words are trapped, a listening presence is life-altering. A question can feel invasive, an interrogation a challenge, but a listener opens a doorway without knocking, without pressing, without forcing. The act of listening acknowledges that the other's experience is valid, that the other's pain is real, that the other's silence is worthy of attention, that the other's story matters. And in that acknowledgement, healing begins, slowly, quietly, endlessly. Listening is the bridge between isolation and connection. It is the gentle hand that steadies a falling soul, the quiet space where someone can finally unfold, the mirror in which another sees themselves fully and without judgment. Every word heard, every pause respected, every sigh acknowledged, every silence honored adds to the invisible architecture of trust. And trust is the soil from which understanding, compassion, and eventually healing grow. And yet, listening is rarely easy. It demands patience, presence, and surrender. It requires holding back one's own words, desires, judgments, and the urge to fix. It requires standing beside another in the weight of their storm, letting them speak, or remain silent, without imposing an end, a conclusion, a solution. And the beauty of it is that there is no finish. Listening is endless, like a river flowing, like the wind carrying leaves, like the stars watching the night sky, ever present, ever patient, ever open, without demand, without ending. And the power of listening is that it transforms silence into recognition. It transforms hidden pain into visible validation. It transforms isolation into connection. And as it does so, the person who has been silent begins to understand that their voice, their truth, their story, even the pieces they have not yet shared, matter. It begins to loosen the chains, lighten the load, and allow the soul to breathe again. Listening does not end because silence is not finite. The need for acknowledgement is endless. The journey of being heard, of being understood, of being witnessed, stretches on, layer after layer, moment after moment, day after day. And every time someone listens, truly deeply without judgment, they create a space that holds the infinite, where healing can begin, where hearts can unfold, where stories can be carried forward endlessly, 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 without ever stopping, without ever closing, without ever ending. Breaking the silence is the first step toward reclaiming yourself. For too long, silence has been a cage, a shield, a weight, a shadow that hides your pain but also keeps you imprisoned. It has held your truths, your fears, your grief, your dreams, your regrets, your unspoken words, all locked away where no one can see, no one can touch, no one can help. But in breaking that silence, in daring to speak even a fragment of what has been buried, you take the first fragile, trembling step toward freedom. The act of breaking silence is not sudden. It begins as a whisper, a thought that rises above the quiet, a moment of courage that feels terrifying. It may start with a single word, a single confession, a single admission that pierces the stillness. And yet, even in that small moment, the soul begins to stretch, to expand. to remember what it feels like to exist without the suffocating weight of unspoken truths pressing down. Each word released is a brick lifted from the chest. Each truth spoken is a thread mended in the fabric of self. Each confession whispered, shouted, or written aloud reconnects the fragmented pieces of the spirit, allowing the light that had been trapped by silence to seep in slowly, persistently, endlessly. And as the silence cracks, even just a little, the person begins to feel that they are no longer entirely bound, that they are no longer entirely invisible, that they can step into the world and be seen, not as a mask, not as an armor, but as themselves. Fragile, flawed, but whole in a way that silence never allowed. Breaking silence is also an act of claiming agency. For years, the weight of unspoken words has been imposed upon you. By expectation, by fear, by societal norms, by judgment. But in speaking, in breaking the quiet, you declare that you are not merely a vessel for hidden pain. You are a living, breathing presence with thoughts, feelings, and a right to be understood. You reclaim the parts of yourself that were lost to shame, to fear, to pretense, to quiet endurance. And the process is endless, because every truth told leads to another. Every word spoken opens another door. Every moment of courage reveals more layers to explore, more pieces of yourself to reclaim, more fragments of freedom to experience. And it is not a one-time act. Breaking the silence is continuous, because the weight of years of unspoken pain cannot vanish in a single breath. You break it piece by piece, day by day, moment by moment. You speak truths that were once unspeakable. You reveal wounds that were once hidden. You acknowledge fears that were once denied. And with every act, the self becomes less fractured, less silenced, less imprisoned, until the soul begins to expand, until the chest begins to feel lighter, until the mind begins to remember clarity, until the heart begins to open again. Breaking silence also carries power beyond yourself. Every word spoken, every truth shared, every moment of courage becomes a beacon for others trapped in their own quiet prisons. It tells them that they are not alone, that they are seen, that they are understood, that there is a way forward. And so the act grows, ripples outward, layers upon layers, touching unseen hearts, whispering encouragement, offering hope, spreading endlessly, 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 without ever stopping, without ever fading, without ever ending. Because breaking silence is not just speaking, it is living. It is reclaiming your voice, your truth, yourself, your life. And as long as there are hidden pains, as long as there are quiet hearts, as long as there are minds that have suffered in silence, the process continues, building, expanding, flowing without end, without pause, without finality, endlessly, 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 as infinite as the courage it takes to finally say, I exist, I matter, I am here. And so, the silence that once weighed us down, the hidden pain that once broke us piece by piece, the unseen battles that we fought alone, they do not define us forever. Because every moment we choose to speak, every truth we dare to share, every fragment of ourselves we reclaim, we rise. We rise not just from the shadows of our own minds, but from the weight the world placed upon us. We rise because the courage to break silence is the courage to live fully. We rise because our pain, once hidden, becomes our strength when faced with honesty. We rise because every tear we let fall, every word we let out, every story we allow to be told, lights the path, not just for ourselves, but for anyone else who has ever suffered in quiet. So remember this, the darkness you carried is not the end. The silence you endured is not your prison forever. The broken pieces of your soul can be gathered, stitched and reshaped into a life stronger, brighter, and more alive than you ever imagined. And in that reclamation, in that breaking of silence, you will discover that the most powerful voice you have is your own. The voice that says, I am here, I am real, I am whole. Because when silence is broken, The soul awakens, the heart breathes, and life begins anew, endlessly, fearlessly, and beautifully.